Good evening from Honeysuckle Farm. Welcome to Fireside Chat Time with Chris and Tina.
This is so fun. So, cheers. We are having an enjoyable evening. We have just eaten dinner and now we are enjoying some fireside time and a good cup of decaf coffee out of my Whispering Willow Farm mug. This is the Gen 1 version, by the way. You know, this is old school.
That's Gen 2.
This is Gen 2. So the other one is the Gen 1.
The small one is Gen 1. That's right. And that one is the larger one with the bigger handle.
I believe Ariella's using our Gen 1 now for a teacup.
Here she comes to show you.
There she is.
I'm using it for apple cider.
Here, let's show you the difference between, here's the Generation 1 from Whispering Willows and the Gen 2. Quite a difference. Chris keeps moving his a little bit.
Handle.
Yeah, the handle's a little smaller. They're both adorable and we love them, but that is the perfect size for Ariella.
Yes, to enjoy a nice cup of apple cinnamon tea that tastes a lot like apple cider.
Chris and I have funny standards for coffee mugs. You have to be able to get all your fingers in the handle.
And for me, it's I'll take 3 out of 4. That will get there. But we're just sitting here making some lists of things to do on the farm. You know, it's a busy time for everybody this time of year. You've got all of your transitional work where we're finishing up the summer harvest and the early fall harvest season. We've got fall planting, we've got greenhouses to get into gear, we've got all these farm plans for winter. But again, it's been a busy season of putting our food up and canning. Oh my word, canning, and having to put up additional shelves just to hold the canned food in the freeze dryer, and it's been a blessed and wonderful time.
Needing to reorganize the storage room to put all the canned food up.
Yeah, so they say you should pile your food to the rafters, and check that box, huh? So now it's time to raise the roof, I guess. Maybe put it up in the rafters. I love you. So we are just sitting here tonight, figuring we'd talk to you guys and talk about some things, some of our projects that we're going to transition to for this fall, and some of the things on our list. In fact, Tina made a big list of things that we are doing from this fall. You know, we've got some new breeder turkeys that we've got to get their new chalet built, and we've got some reorganization of our livestock to do for getting ready for the fall. You know, kind of take things out of grazing areas and into their wintering pasture now, and things like that, and start transitioning to all that kind of feed. You know, we met somebody recently who actually suggested a way he gets his pigs fed for free for a few months now is following this Halloween holiday where all the pumpkins have to be off the lot so that people can get their Christmas tree lots set up. He actually gets a huge dump trailer filled with all these extra pumpkins and a big gooseneck trailer too. And so said that'll usually feed his pigs until mid-January or later, just off of those pumpkins. So just things like that we can all get ready for and are making our list. And if you have a homestead, then you yourself are aware that there is anything but free time, right? There's always a list. There's always something we're getting ready to do to prepare for the next season. And that's wonderful. That's the cycle of everything in the seasonal thing of homesteading world. And then to make your homestead better as that time goes on.
But I do look forward to winter because that is the time that I get to pour over the books and the seed catalogs and plan things, and you're inside a little bit more because it's so cold outside.
It is, as she whispered, so cold outside. And it gets dark earlier, which the nice thing about it getting dark earlier is that means we do a lot of this. We come inside, sit by the fire, play games. It seems like we do have more leisure time in the winter. As much as I hate to use the word leisure.
However, we've never had a greenhouse like what we plan to have this year.
That is true. So in case you're just joining us, there is part 1 is already filmed and out there on our channel. Part 2 coming soon. We are working on a 20 by 40 subterranean greenhouse that will allow us to get a lot of full-time winter growing going. So that's one of the things that we're working on. It's on our list of things we figured we could talk to you about and see what's going on. We are in the midst of our calving season out there at the pasture with our cattle, with our Dexter cows. So far, I think the record is 10 minutes on the birth, although it's any day now. Still waiting on short stack. She still has not dropped. That cow is 4 feet tall and 5 feet wide, y'all. It's funny. So we've got some other things going on for this winter. In fact, we had a very interesting event happen last week. Some friends of ours from a homeschool co-op called up in the middle of the day and asked if they could borrow me for a moment. Usually, that's not a good thing when somebody says, "Hey, can I borrow you for your skills?"
Well, I mean, if they ask you to come lift something or open a jar, that's different.
True. Yeah. And
so we had some friends that had a cat that they thought had got hit by a car. However, the cat did not get hit by a car. Chris went over there, and upon further inspection, he believes that the cat was poisoned. And so he proceeded to give these kids I don't know how long the little class went on, but he gave them a class on
he's got a medical triage.
Triage basically for animals, but same thing would basically translate over to a human.
Yeah, we talked about that a lot. And that was the thing that the parents were concerned about. First off, best audience you can ever have for any kind of training are great, attentive homeschool kids. If I could clone them as an audience, my job would be so easy. And they really took to it like a fish to water. It was great to watch them. You know, they were getting their hands on, asking questions, using instrumentation.
One of them
notes.
You said took notes, yeah.
Yeah, and then went and her mom actually caught up with me later and said that she is now putting together her kit and writing down the acronyms that she learned and doing some things to help get their homestead.
She wrote them on the dry erase board that afternoon. Remember when they went in from your class? She wrote them on their board.
Yeah. So I think with that and with some other friends we've had, I think a big thing we're going to focus on doing real soon here on the channel has to be that homestead medical course, right? Like when you say medical, that's a very, very broad term, right? That's everything from tinctures and apothecaries to the herbs and stuff that you're growing to make all that stuff. But what we're talking about is strictly, trauma medicine, the first responder, because we have this misnomer in society that the first responder are the people that show up in the ambulance. The first responder is the person who gets there first. And out here on the homestead, there's not usually an ambulance driving by our driveway or coming up the hill when we need them, right? Or anybody's homestead, really, for that matter. So you become the first responder. You're the first on scene. And what do you do? And how important is it then to work and to save people and to reduce the amount of damage that can happen while you're waiting on secondary responders to show up? Even if you do nothing but you show up, you're actually the first responder. So if somebody's coming to you and you're injured, would you want them to do nothing, do something that saves your life, do something that reduces the severity of the injury, do something that hopefully helps you heal quicker, maybe all of the above? And that's something that a lot of people don't really have an exposure to. I think we need to talk about. We'll kind of review our medical kit, why we have what we have out here on the homestead, and run a course and be able to put something together and share it with you guys out here on YouTube. Again, legal disclaimer, we're not doctors, we're not licensed certified medical people. We are homesteaders sharing our home medical things that we have to take care of each other until medical help arrives. And there's been enough interest between that family alone, which could fill up a small classroom, and some other people locally that we've met at some of the homesteader groups that we've been to. That I think that's something we need to get on the calendar soon. And what about you on your homestead? Do you guys often do a calendar? Do you do training on anything? Do you share that knowledge, not just on YouTube, but do you share it in person? Do you go over other people's houses and learn about food preservation or sourdough bread making or medical things or any of those things? Because that's how we regain all these skills into this generation, don't you think?
I agree.
Yeah. So I think this homestead medical will be a great class for all of us, won't it? There was definitely an incident I remember not last year now, it'll be 2 years this January, where you got injured. And it was all we could do to get to that med bag in time to splint your ankle up.
That was February 17th of, what was last?
No.
The year before last.
Yeah.
Wow.
21. Yep. So, anyway.
I decided we went sledding in this we went sledding, and I decided that I was going to stop myself from going down the hill by putting my foot out, and because I was going to hit a tree. So I put my foot out like this and hit the tree right on my foot, and I ended up spraining my ankle pretty badly. It messed up the ligaments in my ankle, and was not pleasant, nor was it fun. And it took, my ankle's still not quite right, so it was not fun.
But that is one of those things too, where how many accidents like that can happen on a homestead? A chainsaw log falling on somebody's ankle, somebody sliding off of their roof when they're working on their roof and taking a fall of 2 to 3 times their height.
Burns.
Their foot going sideways. Burns, chemical burns, fire burns, explosions.
We've had experience with burns. We've also had experience with, wood chipper almost breaking a leg.
Almost.
It actually didn't break any bones. It separated the muscle from the bone, right?
Yeah. Pulled that tendon and tore it. Yep. That was wild. And in fact, some of those examples are all real world.
Those are real world examples.
We went to go help another man with his roof on a shop right around the corner, and we got there, and there's 2 guys cradling each other, which normally isn't a regular roofing activity. But one of them's foot was going the wrong way based off of his leg, and ended up we isolated that foot. But they were so concerned about severed arteries and things like that in his leg and secondary injuries to the head that they ended up actually life flighting that guy and bringing him out in a helicopter. And of course, we won't even get started on all the car crash incidents. But the whole point is there's a lot of things.
That's not medic.
True.
I mean, it is medic, but it's not homestead related. Chris Clark has a huge medic bag, and it seems to me that anytime he gets in the car to go somewhere, he stumbles upon a car wreck, and he's always the first responder. And I mean, he's even held somebody's brain in their head before. I mean, it's pretty serious stuff he rolls up on.
But again, I'd rather roll up on that stuff and have an inkling of what to do and the equipment to do it.
And I also have to say, if I was the one with my brains coming out, I would want Chris Clark there, because this man will do whatever it takes to get you okay.
Wow. Thank you.
I'm not the only one that said that. Many people have said if the world's ever coming to an end, they want Chris Clark with them. So,
oh boy, no pressure.
No pressure.
I'm gonna enjoy my coffee. I think we'll get that on the schedule. I think we'll do it in this coming week. So look for that video coming up on Homestead Medical. But what were some of the other things? It won't be
until after election.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, it won't be till after election. We have too much going on before then.
That's right. We've got a lot going on before then. We got people. My parents are coming. Our parents are
after. That's after election. Though. They don't get here until 10th-ish, something like that.
Yeah. But we've got a lot going on, a whole lot. So what are some of the other things we want to do? We have to organize things on our homestead, right? You build a list. Why don't we share that list? Maybe some other homesteading audience has a similar list, or it'll jar their memory.
Well, we're doing clean outs for the summer garden beds and that kind of thing, and then amending and using leaf mulch and wood chips to cover things up. May even plant some cover crops just to see how that works out. We finished putting together a birthing kit for the cows already.
We should go
one of the things we should, that could be a whole video, go over
it could be,
a birthing kit. And the same is relevant for goats.
Yes.
Chickens, you don't really need anything like that. Pigs, I don't know that you need a birthing kit for that.
No.
We've also talked about, let's see.
When you talk about cover crops, are you going to do any of them that you've learned from any of the permaculture things this year, like nitrogen fixers, or to put something back in, or you think we're just going to do that in compost?
I don't feel like I know enough about that to share yet. However, composting, yes, that was one of the things I was just going to say, is I do want to build several different compost piles. I don't know how many I could flip. We should have to flip them every day. I don't know how many I could do by myself. Maybe I'll just start with one. But I'd like to essentially have maybe 6 or 7 going at once eventually. So,
We definitely will. Now's the time doing that seasonal prep when we go to move our cows into the spot where we're going to keep them for the winter and feed them in. We just should come along with a tractor and scoop up all that pre-made compost where it's just been a couple of months now of some hay and cow manure.
that has to sit for a year before we can put it on. It has to sit in the compost piles before we can.
But talk about ready-made, because it's already combined with enough brown matter and green matter. And it's going to be a wonderful mix. Just has to cook.
Yeah. One of the other things that I want to work on is mapping out our homestead, drawing it out. What is where, like almost like map it all out so that we can see where we're going and what we're doing, and maybe there's a more efficient way to maneuver it.
Yeah. We've heard a lot of talk about that over the past year, about people saying, if you're getting on your homestead, make sure you go for infrastructure first, then add your projects or your critters after your infrastructure's there. But to that same note, somebody very wisely once said, don't make a fence permanent until you haven't moved it for 3 years. You know,
and I don't think we've not moved a fence for 3 years.
Exactly.
We've been here, we've lived here 2 years, but we've had our animals here for over.
We have not had a fence post stay in the ground for 2 years yet.
No. Well, the only ones we have had stay in the ground are the ones down the hill that the big goats and the chickens are in.
Have they been there for 2 years now?
Yeah.
Okay, point is on those, that's even rare, but even then, as part of our farm replanning, we were talking about moving those animals and getting them to their new home.
Because we don't like where they are.
Right, so we're going for that farm homestead by design and intent rather than by, well, that's just where it landed, so now we're inefficiently using our whole day, every week, every year. So let's aim for some more efficient methods.
And that is kind of a battle that we're facing, because we needed a place to put the animals. We picked a spot, we put them there. We've almost been reactionally homesteading. Like, this would happen, so we would react to it. This would happen, we'd get this animal, we would react to it. I mean,
not that anyone else has ever done that before.
Yeah, no, and it's not. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm
no,
just saying
we
have had to.
Somebody calls you up and they say, "Hey, we have 4 goats. Can you pick them up?"
Yeah, something's wrong. Can you come get this?
Yeah.
We can't take care of this animal anymore. You know, whatever the case may be, we felt such a sense of urgency to get these things in place that we did a lot of things out of order. Right. We had animals on our property before we even had a place to live. But we were driving 30 minutes here every day and then 30 minutes home every day. So an hour drive time to come take care of our animals here on this property for probably 2 years.
At least. 2.5
years, actually. We lived in Fairview for 2.5 years. So we drove an hour out of our way every day to come and take care of these animals, because we felt such a sense of urgency to have another food source outside of the grocery store.
True, and in that, I think the benefit, it's an education. Is it the most efficient way to run a homestead permanently? No. Was it a great way to get an education on what it takes to keep your animals and to plan out your water and feed plots better, and to handle your acreage for your cattle or your goats or your sheep? It's been such a learning experience. I wouldn't trade it. But again, it's now time to mix in some wisdom of other people with our experience. So using some of their experience, which, as we don't have to repeat their errors, and design it more with a lot more efficiency as well as intentionality behind our placement of things. Especially now with I think we've got it pretty much narrowed down of where we're going to have our gardens every year and how we're going to get that soil there, and our compost pile locations and our greenhouses. So now that we're getting that sorted out, it makes it easier. And we didn't always have the same land when we owned this land. We were able to recently, just within the last year, basically acquire some acreage that is adjacent to our land, and that had pasture on it. When we first bought this land, there was 0 pasture. In fact, we had to cut our way onto the property with machetes and chainsaws just to set foot on it. This whole place was nothing but woods. So clearing it out, all of us, just to make our homestead and make spots for our animals, and then whatever grass could grow on whatever the soil and the chert mix happened to be, and just letting things happen in the wild and garden and things like that. We have been very blessed with our water source. We have an incredible spring.
Yeah, there was a drought this summer, and a lot of people lost their gardens because they couldn't water, but we didn't have water restrictions. Don't apply to us, thank the Lord, because we have the spring, and it is constantly flowing, and it is just amazing. But one of the other things you mentioned, the garden, was that we wanted to change for next year is we want to use I think they're called silage tarps. The black, it's not really weed liner like you would go and buy at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's this really heavy duty. You put it down, they're huge. They would be the size of your garden. You put them down and you take the torch and you burn the hole in it, and it seals it so that it doesn't rip, and then you plant in that hole, and then you don't have to worry about weeds, because this year, as hot as it got so hot down there, I couldn't get down there every day to weed because it was just so hot. By the time we would wake up, I wake up early in the morning, we wake up and it would still be so hot you couldn't go out and work. So
I also think that will help us garden by design. This year, about 50% of our garden space, and I'm just guessing, you would know exactly, but about 50% of our garden space turned out to be just volunteer plants. There were plants that propagated because we kept pigs and chickens where our garden was over the winter last year. And so we didn't plant this, and those
and you saw that George took over the garden.
Right, I was just going to say, it became a very aggressive crop, and it really hindered what we wanted to grow intentionally. So to keep growing intentionally, that is going to be a huge thing for this coming year, right? We'll put it down early. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it water permeable? So the water goes down through it, but weeds and nothing else will grow up through it unless it's through the hole that we burn out.
Speaking of gardening, that's another thing that I wanted to talk with you is about setting up a drip irrigation system. Then we wouldn't be using the overhead watering. Is not good for the garden because you don't want to necessarily get the leaves of all the plants wet. You want to water the roots. And so I would like to set up drip irrigation. I know nothing about that, so we'll have to figure all that out. But especially since we have the spring and we set it up on timers, it would just go off automatically and be super efficient.
One of the aspects that I've been looking into, and I realize that there are homesteaders out there who have conquered that before. So if you've got a good drip irrigation system or just some important lessons you learned from it, please share it with us in the comment sections. We would love to hear from you about it before we neck dive into this. But one of the things I'm considering about our irrigation, especially because we're not moving the garden, is this allows us the ability to put in almost a multi-level irrigation. So we'll have something that will drip down onto the top. But if first I till up and I put in almost some perforated pipe in a snake pattern through the ground, we can actually turn on a secondary irrigation system, which would put water 12 to 18 inches down. What that'll do is create a moisture level that will attract the roots, because the roots of the plants grow toward water, and that will help give us a stronger root system for all of our crops.
See why you want Chris Clark on your side? It's that brain, y'all.
I might be over-engineering it, maybe slightly. And if you've wrestled with that idea and either come up with definitely ways not to do an irrigation in-depth system, then great, share it with us. If you've come up with a way that you've found that works for your irrigation in-depth system, please share that with us too. Not even sure if that's what we call it.
My concern about the drip irrigation is I don't know how our freezes would affect it.
Well, the second level one that I'm talking about would be unaffected, it'd be deep enough. The first one would actually be something flexible, so we could pull that up and we would snake it in the pattern and stake it out when we bore our holes in to plant our plants with intentionality, so that it's only where we wanted them. And then once it's drained, nothing's in it, it's just empty in the winter. Now in the greenhouse, we'll definitely have some incredible irrigation in there too, so that your water with intention is set up on a timer.
Nice.
In the big subterranean greenhouse.
Yeah, I'm excited about that greenhouse.
20 by 40 is huge. It's almost like a green warehouse.
It is huge.
It's huge.
It is huge. But the thing that worries me is I see that space and I'm like, how do I set up the things inside? And I totally overanalyze the whole thing.
And I guarantee the way you set it up first is not the way you're going to have it set up 5 years from now. Really.
Probably.
Well, again, this is the beauty of learning how to do all this and doing it all together, and we'll come up with ways.
There's nobody I'd rather do it with.
Oh, thank you.
Favorite.
You're my favorite.
I know.
That works out really well.
It does.
For those of you who don't know, too, we have been married almost 26 years now, so that's pretty neat. Be doing this
For
with
all
our
you
kids.
people, if you're out there watching, you're probably not, because I don't know that any of those people that thought we weren't going to make it are still in our lives. There were a lot of people who thought we weren't going to make it when we got married.
Well,
You were wrong.
to their credit, the worldly story doesn't make much sense. We met. A few weeks later, we went out on our first date. A few months later, we were married. And then
3
throw
months
in,
later.
right. And we would have done it sooner if it weren't for having to
Well,
kind
we
of
met in
satisfy some
February,
stuff.
and we got married in June.
And,
No, we met in January. We went on our first date in February. We got engaged in March. We got married in June.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing about that, too, is you mix in with that. It hasn't been, no one's life is, I guess, easy from their early 20s to their 40s, at least not the majority of people out there. But you mix in with that the fact that we moved all over. Thank you, U.S. military. So that was an experience. We were never able to put down roots. So to be able to retire out of that and start a homestead is more than a dream come true. It's the culmination of everything we wanted during all those years we were traveling and moving around and watching other people put roots down, and we would just tell ourselves someday, someday, someday. And now that someday's here, it's a wonderful journey to get to do it with you. So it's more like we ran the race and now we're enjoying the prize, and it makes it taste that much sweeter. And I love it. I love you.
Love you. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to say good night to you guys, and we will talk to you soon. Do you have anything else?
Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit
ring
that
bell.
bell button for notification. Maybe Ariella can come and help us out with the bell button.
Where's that bell?
Where is it?
Wherever it is.
Wherever it is. All right, you guys. What do we say? Keep
Keep
growing.
growing.